Hey everybody, Sean here from VidGamiac.com. Here we are today back in Overwatch's Retribution event going for the Plausible Deniability achievement. This one is going to be the big one available to do whenever the event is going to be available in the arcade. It is to beat the story version of the event on Legendary difficulty. So obviously you want to make sure you do this on Legendary difficulty in story mode, which means you are going to be limited to the 4 story mode characters. So make sure you take your pick and hopefully you have a pretty good team with you. So you have Moira, Reaper, McCree, and Genji to work with. Once the game loads up, what you want to do is you want to make sure you have someone head up to the door to set the explosives to start the breach. Then everyone's going to fall back to the spawn room, and then everyone's basically going to hold their position here for the entirety of the first segment. You're going to have 2 entrances to work with, so you have the main one up front, and then you are going to have one on the left. So basically, just make sure you use the front entrance as a bottleneck to just get the enemies through. That way you can thin them out, and then you can take them out one at a time. And then, of course, once things start to get a little hectic, enemies are going to start pushing in from the left side, so make sure you cover that side when enemies do come out of there. So the basic squad breakdown is McCree and Reaper are going to be the main damage dealers. Reaper is going to deal a ton of damage up close, and McCree is going to stand back and then try to pop critical hits from far away. Genji is going to kind of want to dance between the 2 attacking positions, as his normal attack is going to be very good from far away, but if the Genji can master the deflection, it's going to be very useful up close, especially when the enemies start pushing in and start blasting everyone. So a Genji in the doorway using his deflection is going to be a great equalizer in many situations. And then unfortunately your one and only healer is going to be Moira, who can also do damage, but the Moira is obviously going to be focused on trying to keep the team up the best they can. Now, when it comes to enemy breakdown, you're going to be dealing with 2 major types of normal enemies. You have the regular troopers, which are basically cannon fodder. You can take them out super duper easily. And then you're going to have the enforcers, who are going to be the bigger guys, who are going to deal a ton of damage and have quite a bit more health, and are going to be super dangerous if you try to let them attack in a group. So it's best to utilize any bottlenecks on the map whenever dealing with them. So, as mentioned before, the key to doing well during the breach segment is to basically hold the front door and then check up on the left door every now and again to see what directions the troopers are pushing in from and making sure you adjust accordingly. Obviously, don't make sure you leave the spawn room and overextend, and then you should be good for this part. And then basically you can just stand out here in front and then just pick off the troopers from a distance. Now, as for dealing with the enforcers who are going to start pushing us back, we're going to try to back up and then let them funnel themselves through the front door. Thankfully, the front door is basically going to force the enforcers to start marching in a straight line to get to us. So as long as we are backing up, we should have plenty of space to deal with them. Your best bet with dealing with them is to have McCree throw off his stun grenade, and that way everyone can hit them while they're stunned and then finish them off super duper quickly. Try your best to always land critical hits on the enforcers. You definitely want to take them out as quickly as possible. So McCree stun grenade, and then everyone's going to pile on with headshots. Now, another reason you want to make sure everyone piles up in the spawn room is it's going to give you a really good use of Moira's healing orb, as she is going to be able to bounce it up and down the ceiling as well as the walls, and everyone's going to be healed super efficiently. Now, keep holding the position until you are about 3 minutes in or so. You are going to get a bunch of enemies who are going to repel in from the middle. You want the McCree player to head outside, and they're going to get ready to hit the entire group with a stun grenade, and then everyone's going to pile on from far away. Make sure you prioritize the enforcer that does drop down first, and then just pick off the rest of the troopers while they are stunned. Hopefully you can get all that in super duper quickly, and then you can get a jump on them before they get a jump on you. And then we're just going to get back to the spawn room and then get back to the defense. This whole breach segment is going to be about 4 to 5 minutes or so it is going to be a bit of a slog to get through, especially if this is your X amount of time going through this, since you needed so many attempts to probably get this done on Legendary. So make sure you try to be a little patient with this part, but basic Horde mode stuff. Thankfully, in story mode, we don't have any specials to deal with during this segment, so we don't have to worry about any snipers, assassins, nor heavies quite just yet. Once you finish up the breach, everyone's going to clear up the room, and then we're going to head over to the vault door and then wait for it to blow. You want to make sure you have the Genji player take point and then head outside to pull the enemies. Make sure once the enemies spawn, everyone pulls back, and then you are going to use the vault door as a bottleneck. Genji is going to want to take point and then throw up his deflection, and then once the enforcers push push through. Make sure you have the McCree player hit him with a stun grenade, and then you should be able to thin out the crowd super duper quickly. And then we're going to press up again, so the Genji is going to want to take point. You are going to get this cutscene where we get our first special introduction in the form of the sniper. With this one, Genji is going to definitely want to take point, try to pull her in an advantageous spot, which is going to be straight ahead, and then basically the Genji is going to hold the door and then use his deflection to try to pick off the sniper from way back here. So if Genji can time it well, he can actually use his deflection to take out the sniper with her own shot, which is going to be super useful. It does take a lot of skill to use, so hopefully you are running a really good Genji player, but you are going to rely on him mostly to take out all the snipers, as she is going to deal 200 points if she does clip someone. So everyone's just going to kind of want to hang back here and then just hopefully rely on the Genji. So just make sure you use Genji's deflection. Thankfully, it's only a special and not an ultimate, so you don't have to wait on it too long for the recharge, and Genji can take care of the snipers by himself a-okay. Once you deal with the first sniper, make sure everyone heads down the street and rounds the first corner right here. Try to thin out all of the enemies the best you can. There should only be troopers out on the street, so nothing too bad quite just yet. Make sure you just move forward in inches until you pull the next set of enforcers down, and then just make sure you use the high ground to pick them off from far away. If they are giving you too much trouble, just make sure you pull back, and then you can bottleneck them using the corner. And then once you clear out all of the first batch of enforcers, then we're going to move up. It's very important that you don't rush this part because you don't want the enemy spawn moments to overlap with one another. So no one is going to pass by this archway until you deal with the first set of enemies. Once everyone's taken care of, then you are going to move up to pull the first batch. You should get these enemies who are going to pop out of this door. So then just pull back to the archway and then fire away. You should get the dropship guys to come in shortly thereafter, but as long as you don't move up too far, you don't have to deal with the boat guys right away. So you're going to just have to deal with this set of enforcers. There are still going to be a ton of them, which is why we don't want the spawn sequences to stack with one another. So same strategy, just make sure you try to shoot them using the high ground, and if they are giving you a bad push, just make sure you pull back to the corner. And if you are still finding yourself overwhelmed even with that, you can pull back all the way back to the spawn room if totally necessary. Then finally push up one more time to get the last crescendo of the docks area, which are going to be the boat guys. Same thing, a bunch of enforcers are going to start pushing on our position. Just make sure you pull back, wrap them around the corner to get the bottleneck, and then just pick them off. And then again, if totally necessary, you can pull all the way back to the spawn room and then use the vault door as another bottleneck. And then if that fails, you can back up all the way to the starting area and then use that initial door as a bottleneck. So plenty of bottlenecks in the level. Just keep pulling back whenever you need to, but you should be able to hold your position a-okay as long as you are keeping up with the fire. Then you're going to get another sniper right here. Try to have the Genji player try to pull her to this post, and then the Genji player can use his deflection right here in the window on the archway, and then everyone else can just kind of stay far back and then pick her off through the bottom of the arch. That one should be pretty easy to deal with since it is going to be a bigger open area right here, as long as you try to get the sniper to pull forward. Once she's dealt with, just make sure you clear out the rest of the normal enemies at the docks, and then we're going to head over to this building. Don't go inside quite just yet. Make sure you take out all of the enemies indoors. Then someone's going to take point and then go forward to initiate the next spawn of enemies. Wait till the doors and windows get blown through, and then once the enemies breach the building, everyone's going to back up, back outside, and then use the front door as a bottleneck, and then they are going to pull the enemies forward to this door, and then we can thin them out this way. So again, back to our bottleneck strategy, and that's going to be the name of the game whenever trying to take out these bigger waves of enemies. Make sure everyone gets up into the building, and then once it's absolutely safe to do so, you want to make sure you have the Reaper player take point. They're going to take a step into the middle of the bridge, and then what's going to happen is the next wave is going to spawn. Reaper is going to use his teleport to teleport back to the group, and then everyone's going to immediately head back out through the door they just came through. What's going to happen is a dropship is going to come in as well as a sniper spawn. So everyone's going to pull back to this door right here, and then we're going to use our bottleneck strategy to pull all of the troopers and enforcers through, and we're going to thin out the crowd like we normally do, trying to get them in a straight line and just picking off shots as they come through one at a time. Take advantage of McCree's stun grenades and always try to go for critical hits on the enforcers, and you should be able to thin the line out. Make sure you are mindful for the sniper, especially if he jumps over to this side. She can still pop us across from this corner right here, but you do have several blind spots to work with thanks to the geography of this door. The only real way she can hit you is from this line, or if she warps into the building, she can take up a spot on the balcony, but that's going to actually be a good thing since it's way easier to hit her whenever she is on the balcony. Genji player takes point and then tries to get her with a deflect, and the McCree player is going to hang back and then try to pop her from far away. Reaper is going to do his best to defend the door from the normal enemies, and Moira is basically going to spend this entire time healing. So that's basically the strategy to try to take her out. Hopefully you can get her while she's in one place, but if she does make the jump, you are going to have to adjust your aim quite a bit, so be a little careful of that. A second sniper is going to also drop here, so hopefully you can thin out one of them, and then you can try to pull the other one through. So there is going to be the other one right there. Again, make sure you watch out for the angle she can shoot you through. Make sure you take advantage of the blind spots. If someone on the team spots her, make sure they call out to the group on her position, and then everyone's going to adjust the strategy according to where she is. So Genji is going to take point, use that deflection. McCree is going to stand far back and try to pop her from a safe distance. And of course, you can always fall back on the McCree ultimate if totally necessary, as that is going to be a one-shot kill if you can get it to charge up right away. Once both of the snipers are dealt with, everyone's going to pile on in the middle of the bridge right here. You want to make sure you have the Reaper player move up, and then basically he's going to try to get the next cutscene to start. It's going to start up once he's in the middle of the square, and basically what you are trying to do is you're trying to force the next special to spawn, which is going to be the assassin. As soon as the cutscene's over, Reaper is going to use his teleport ability to get back to the bridge, and everyone's just going to fall back all the way through the building back to the front door. So we're going to basically try to pull the assassin all the way back here where it's easier to deal with her, as it's going to be far away from the normal enemies. The assassin is basically going to pounce on someone and is going to down them. You can knock an assassin off by meleeing them off someone, so make sure you do that so they don't die, as the assassin is going to hit very hard on legendary difficulty. That is also going to stun her, and then everyone's just going to pile in on her that way. This is going to be one of the few spots where Genji's ultimate is going to be very useful, as he is going to have a melee-oriented ultimate. So make sure you save Genji's ultimates for the assassin encounters, as he is going to be able to take her out super duper quickly, especially once you knock her off someone and stun her. Then everyone's just going to thin out the enemies. Hopefully you can get rid of the assassin really quickly so you aren't dealing with the bunch of normal enemies that follow right after her. Make sure you take them out while moving up. Once you get past the bridge, watch out for the two buildings on the sides of the archway that lead into the square. So try your best to take them out. You are basically going to regroup everyone back up at the square. Try to take out all of the enemies that are going to come out of every corner. Don't move up quite just yet. Make sure you don't get past this street. You are going to need to do the same thing as earlier, where we need to have the Reaper do another pull. Reaper is going to move up, and then he's going to move up all the way to the front of the museum to start the next cutscene. You are going to deal with the third and final type of special in the form of the Heavy, who is going to be the big guy and is going to be quite a pain to deal with on Legendary. Reaper is going to quickly teleport back, and then everyone's going to fall all the way back to the spawn room. So it is going to be a long journey. Thankfully, the Heavy is going to move very slow unless he's attacking you, so everyone should be able to get there a-okay. So take advantage of everyone's mobility abilities, and then we should be able to get there before any trouble can come our way. Thankfully, there aren't going to be any enemies along the way as we are doing our big backtrack, but just make sure you watch your back every now and again, as someone might give you the good old scare. Now, you're going to have a little bit of time before the Heavy gets here. It's going to be very important that the McCree player gets his ultimate ready, as you are going to need that to deal a significant amount of damage to the Heavy on the initial shot. So what you want to do basically is make sure everyone piles in over by the door, and everyone's going to work on killing all of the enemies that come on through. Obviously, make sure you let the McCree player get the bulk of the kills if they are pretty far away from their ultimate, but as soon as you lock down McCree's ultimate, you should be ready to have everyone take up their positions. Make sure everyone's paying attention to what's going on in the background, though. You definitely want to call out for when the Heavy does round that corner. That way everyone is going to be ready to get the jump on him. But once the McCree player has his ultimate ready, he's going to head up to the right side balcony. It's going to be on the left side coming in from the door, so just make sure you head up there. Everyone else is going to do their best to hold the door and keep an eye out for that Heavy, and then we should be good to start fighting him once he does get through our bottleneck. So once the McCree player gets up to the balcony, make sure he punches out the rest of the handrail. That way you get as clear of a shot as you can. Make sure everyone is healed up to full health as best they can. So make sure you have the Moira player start dropping some heals down. Once the heavy finally rounds the corner, everyone's just going to lay in on him, so everyone's going to pop shots on him from far away. Moira can bounce her damage orb up and down in the little vault hallway to do a ton of damage to the regular enemies and the heavy as he's passing through. And then once he passes through, everyone's going to try to pull him away from the McCree's balcony right here. McCree is going to use his ultimate. Hopefully you get the shot off A-OK. Make sure you let it go at the last minute. If you manage to clip the heavy, you should take about a quarter of his health down with a perfectly timed McCree ultimate. So make sure you get that shot off before you either die or the timer runs out. Now, once the McCree player gets their ultimate off, McCree is going to drop down from the balcony and they're going to roll into the spawn room. Then you're going to have someone take his place on his balcony, and then someone's going to go to the opposite balcony. The key to doing well with the heavy in this area is to basically form this triangle around him, and then everyone's going to take turns pulling him in their direction. And then whoever isn't pulling them is going to basically fire in on him from the backside and try to hit the 2 red spots on his back, which are going to be his critical areas. So make sure you try your best to do that. If the McCree player is going to be a little bit daring, he can go up and then try to hit him with a stun grenade. Try to reserve the stun grenades for escape plans, though, as you definitely want to use them when the heavy starts to turn around. And whoever the heavy is currently aggroed on is going to want to try their best to take cover in one of the several rooms. The Moira player is definitely going to need to stay proactive in trying to get her healing orbs across the area, so try your best to have her aim into the rooms and then get those healing orbs bouncing the best they can, which should bring everyone up a bit. If things start to get dicey, everyone can start grouping up together, though, and then you can also try to run a loop around this room. But using one or the other should allow you to efficiently take care of the heavy A-OK, and then once you finally clear him, we're going to move back up. The streets are now going to be sprinkled with a bunch of regular enemies, but it's nothing that you can't manage, thankfully. It's going to mostly be regular troopers. You might have an enforcer or 2, but again, there's nothing too unmanageable here. That being said, you definitely do want to be careful and don't rush things, and you also want to try to get to have the McCree player get their ultimate back, as you are going to need it very soon. So just make sure you feed him the bulk of the regular kills, and then make sure you get that thing up to 100%. And then again, if someone does go down, thankfully you have a ton of space to try to pick them up. So nothing too unmanageable again, since the enemies are going to be super duper thin. So we're just going to slowly make our way back to where we were supposed to be going, which was going to be the museum. So make sure you just head back through the building, cross the bridge. Should be a few stragglers along the way, but again, nothing too unmanageable. And we're just going to slowly move our way back into the square. Be a little careful here. Watch out for the buildings, and watch out for anyone creeping around any corners. And then just make sure you deal with them A-OK. Hopefully the McCree player gets his ultimate back on the journey, and then once you have it, we are going to get ready to push into the entrance of the museum. Once everyone's here, everyone's going to rendezvous at the front door of the museum. You are going to want to have the McCree player have their ultimates at this point. Someone's going to set foot into the museum to get the next batch of enemies to spawn. These are going to be the ones who rappel down from the ceiling. Once they drop in, McCree is going to use his ultimate to try to take out as many of them as he can. It's mostly going to be enforcers, so hopefully you hit the bulk of them. But even if you get some troopers, that's going to be fine. An assassin's also going to come in, so make sure you try to keep an eye out for her. Definitely use that Genji ultimate if you have that as well, as it's only going to be really useful for that situation. And then just take out the rest of the normal enemies. As soon as you take out that initial batch of enemies, just make sure you try to thin out the rest, and then everyone's just going to sprint for the back door. You can skip the whole museum segment if you're quick enough to get to the back door, but of course this is going to be legendary, so make sure you don't get too reckless. Once you make it to the last area, everyone's going to book it for the back left. We're going to hit up this room called the Jesus Room, and we're just going to make our last stand against the first 2 of the final 3 waves here. So everyone pile in to the Jesus Room, and it's going to be a great spot in dealing with the finale. So we're just going to stay here. As you can see, Moira's healing orb is going to be super duper efficient in this tight room, and we are going to have plenty of corners to work with, as well as a nice big bottleneck right in front of us. So once the first dropship comes down, they're going to unleash all of the enemies we're going to deal with the first wave. We have 2 lanes to work with. You're going to have the staircase going up to the right, and then you have the front steps to work with. So someone is going to want to hug the front left corner to work on the staircase whenever there are enemies pushing down from that, but obviously everyone's main focus is going to be the front entrance, especially once the enforcers start piling in. Definitely do take advantage of McCree's stun grenades and Genji's deflect, as they're going to be super efficient in these tight quarters. And of course, Moira's going to keep throwing up her healing orb and getting those crazy bounces off, which should heal everyone super duper quickly. And you should be able to hold this room A-OK. You might actually get some enemies who spawn in this room since this is going to be an enemy spawn point. If you get that situation, you can very easily take them out from behind before they even notice. So super duper efficient for that. And then we're just going to keep working on the enemies. Make sure you prioritize those enforcers. When it comes to the specials, you're going to probably deal with an assassin first. Just make sure you pull her into the room. She should be super duper easy to deal with. So make sure you have someone hunkered down in a corner. Make sure you melee them off super quickly. If it isn't going to be the Genji player, the Genji is going to want to throw off his ultimate, and that should take care of the assassin super duper quickly. Obviously, you want to make sure you try to deal with the assassin as quick as possible, as you want to make sure you get back to holding the room the best you can. So you definitely don't want to be working on the assassin at the same time as trying to hold back the enforcers. So be a little careful of that. As soon as the assassin goes down, you're probably going to be dealing with a sniper next. These snipers are going to be a little dodgy on how you want to deal with them. It's going to come down to where they spawn from. So there's going to be 3 spots in this room that are going to be super advantageous to you. There's going to be 2 pillars directly in front of the front door, one in the back, one closer to the door, and then the third spawn point is going to be at the top of the staircase. So try your best to bait the sniper into one of these 3 spots. That way you can have the bottleneck to your advantage. If the sniper spawns across the map, it might be a little hard to pull her to one of these spots. The Reaper is definitely going to want to try to do this by using his teleports, but hopefully you can get a little lucky and the sniper does take the bait and ends up in one of these 3 spots. You can, of course, have Genji prop up over by the door and then use his deflect to try to deflect the sniper bullets while everyone else does their best to work on guarding the front door from the enforcers. If the Genji is having a hard time with the door being overrun, you could also take advantage of McCree's ultimate. Just be a little careful, as McCree only has enough health to take 1 sniper shot before he does go down. So any other damage from a regular enemy is definitely going to put him out. So be a little careful when trying to aim McCree's ultimate if you are using it against a sniper. So make sure you do keep that in mind, but she shouldn't be too difficult to deal with. Then the start of Wave 2 is going to be a dropship right in front of the door, which is going to be both a good thing or a bad thing. For one, it's going to put the enemies very close to us so we can deal with them quicker. The bad thing is it's going to put the enemies close to us, so they're going to have a quicker time to the door. So whether you see that as a positive or a negative, just make sure you try your best to hold the line, and then just make sure you try to thin out that first dropship A-okay. Just like last time, you're going to be dealing with the same 2 specials, an assassin and a sniper, but they are going to appear together in this wave, so make sure you be a little careful of that. Make sure you try to pull the assassin into the room into one of the corners, that way you aren't dealing with sniper fire trying to save whoever she pounces on, so make sure you try to watch out for that, and then obviously try to pull the sniper to one of the 3 spots where it's going to be easier to deal with her. So you can use that Genji deflect or the McCree ultimate depending on what you have. Make sure you watch out for the timing of either though, especially if the assassin is still floating around somewhere. But make sure you try to micromanage the 2 specials the best you can, and you should be able to have an easier time of this. Make sure you do get rid of the assassin first, though, so make sure you hunker down into the corners and try to bait the assassin into the corners. That way you can deal with her without dealing with the sniper. And then as soon as you are cleared of the assassin, it's time to start working on the sniper. So make sure you do use that Genji deflect or the McCree ultimate, depending on what's available, and then hopefully you can get her before she can move or give us any more trouble. Then just mop up the rest of the enemies from the second wave, and then we're going to get ready for wave number 3, which is the third and final one. Once you notice the break in the fire, everyone's going to bail on the Jesus room, and then everyone's going to hit up the staircase to your right. Everyone's going to meet up at the top of the stairs. This is going to be the start of the loop that we are going to use later. So make sure you remember this spot, as it is going to be very useful for the second half of the third wave. So right before the first dropship comes in, everyone's going to meet at the top of the staircase. Everyone's going to hop over the guardrail and then take the back alleyway and then up this staircase across the deck into the elevator room. The dropship should come in and then drop off a bunch of enemies at the bottom of the elevator room. You want to make sure the Moira and the Genji stay up on the deck and then try to pick people off as they are dropping in. The Reaper and the McCree are going to go to the bottom of the staircase, and they're going to use this bottleneck that is the bottom door. Once the enforcers break through, McCree stun grenade, and then just start backing up, and then just start getting them in a single file line and start picking them off one at a time. As soon as a bunch get through, you definitely want to have the 2 players up top meet up with the players on the bottom, and you're going to definitely want to try to take out every single enemy that comes out of that first ship, since it should be a ton of enforcers. Once they are dealt with, everyone's going to get back up to the deck at the top of the elevator room, and everyone's going to keep an eye out on the bottom and then watch where the heavy is going to drop in. So depending on what side the heavy drops in, he is going to try to go after the group. So for this particular run, he happened to drop in at the bottom entrance to the elevator room. So we're going to have to drop down here and then take the staircase back down. And we're going to head over to this point right here, which if you remember from before, is going to be the top of the staircase of the Jesus room. This is always going to be the reset point of the loop. So if you ever run into any trouble from the heavies, you definitely want to make sure you meet up here. This is going to be legendary difficulty, so eventually we're going to have to be dealing with 2 heavies, but it's always going to be a safe spot right here at the top of this staircase. And the reason for that is the heavy can only chase you up there going 2 ways, either up the staircase or through the top of the restaurant, and you can always drop down using the guardrail, and the heavy isn't going to be able to follow you from the guardrail since the heavy can't jump. Now, it's going to be very important that the group stays together. The reason for that is you want to make sure the heavy is focusing on a single target, and staying together will ensure that you are looping the heavies in the same direction. Now, this is going to be made very challenging on legendary difficulty as you're dealing with 2 heavies. So your first goal as soon as the second one drops in is to try to group them together. That way both of them are chasing the same target at the same time, and you want to try your best to not have them split up during the entirety of the loop. This is going to be a pretty arduous process, so make sure you be a little careful and always keep the group together the best you can. Now, the first major obstacle is going to be to try to group the 2 heavies together. This is going to take a little bit of luck, but I'm going to recommend everyone rendezvous at the top of the far elevator room. This is going to be the bluish one that's going to be closest to the restaurant. What you want to do is you want to make sure you try to get a heavy on either side, so 1 on each entrance, and then everyone basically can cut across the top of the restaurant, heading towards the back and then heading up to the reset point. Once everyone is at the staircase, everyone is going to want to group up at the top, and then you're going to try to keep an eye out on both heavies. You could try to damage the one who is closest to you, but you definitely want to make sure you be careful and don't let that second one sneak up on you. Now, you should be pretty safe at the top of the staircase. There's only going to be 2 lanes of attack, either coming up the staircase or walking across this walkway at the top of the restaurant. Once you get both of the heavies right here, you want to make sure you jump over the guardrail once things are too close for comfort, and that should basically cluster both of them together, and then we should have a safer time of looping them. Everyone's going to book it through the back alley, and then everyone's going to head into the elevator room, and we're just going to press the loop here. Now, it's going to be very important that everyone stays together. So if someone does end up dying, if you are trying to revive them, make sure no one splits up from the group. Instead, you want to make sure you do a long loop back to them. So the key to doing well in this is to obviously try your best to stay as a group, and if you ever do end up splitting the heavies, you are definitely going to want to try to head back up to the reset point, and then try to get them grouped back up together. And basically your goal is to try to keep them together as best as you can, and then once you get the loop down, you can start using it to also damage them. But try your best to first establish the loop, and then get the 2 heavies clustered up on one another. You can also have a few safe spots. You have either one of the 2 elevator rooms to take advantage of, so make sure you just kind of hunker down here if you need some quick healing. Take advantage of Moira's healing orbs the best you can, and then whenever you're trying to get between your safe spots, just make sure you try to thin out any regular enemies, as a stray trooper or enforcer can give you the sneak if you aren't too careful. So that's going to pretty much cover the basics on how to use the loop as a defensive measure, on to how we're going to use it as an offensive measure. So as mentioned before, you can always hit up the reset point whenever you need to try to get the heavies together. It's also going to buy you a bunch of time, as again, since the heavies can't jump, once you jump over the guardrail, they're going to have to go the long way to get around. So make sure you do take advantage of that the best you can. So everyone's going to want to pile on at the top of the staircase by the Jesus room, and then because the heavies are going to take so long to get up here and they're going to have a harder time of getting away from here, you are basically going to hold your point at the top of the staircase. Make sure you keep an eye out for either heavy, and then just make sure you lay in on them as they are either crossing the top of the restaurant or trying to head up the stairs. Then, as soon as they get too close for comfort, hop over that guardrail and then just take the back alley, up the staircase, and then into the elevator room. Now, because the heavies can't follow you over the guardrail, they're going to have to go around the tower right here, and then you can stay here on the top of the deck of the elevator room, and then you can fire down as they are crossing You do want to be a little careful as they can shoot up here as you are going to be out in the open, so make sure you are a little careful. Once things start to get a little too close, everyone pulls back into the elevator room, and you can pick more shots into the heavy as he is getting up the staircase and then as he's crossing the deck. But once he's too close for comfort, just make sure everyone heads down the staircase, back up this staircase, and then into the far elevator room. Be careful when crossing the courtyard, obviously, as you are going to be dealing with that second heavy. Try your best to keep an eye out for both of them, as you don't want them to split up, as that's going to give you a ton of trouble. Once you are at the far elevator room, you can hold your position at the top and then just make sure you try to bait the heavy into chasing you up the staircase. Then we are going to go back outside, watch that little archway right there, and we're going to take the back of the restaurant back up to the reset point at the top of the staircase by the Jesus room. So that's basically going to complete one loop, and then we're just going to use this to work on both heavies, taking one out at a time, and then hopefully you can do your best to keep them together. So again, back at the top of the staircase, we're going to use this time as the heavy makes his journey up here to lay in on him. Once he gets too close for comfort, jump over the guardrail, and then everyone book it to the elevator room. Make sure you hold your position at the elevator room, and then fire on the heavy. Once you lose this position, over to the far elevator room, and then just keep looping between the three sweet spots over and over, trying to keep the two heavies together. It is going to be a war of attrition as they're going to have a ton of health and they're going to hit super hard, and we are playing rather defensively. But as long as you can keep both of the heavies together and you can keep the group together and keep the loop going, you should be able to whittle them down eventually. Thankfully, there's not going to be a time limit on like Uprising, so you can take your sweet time using this strategy to play as defensively as you can, so nothing too bad. In terms of trying to deal the most damage to the heavies, you want to try to bait them into dashing. If they manage to hit a wall while dashing, they're going to get stunned. And obviously, while they're stunned, you can use that time to just lay in on them the best you can, and then hopefully you can build up your ultimate. The only ultimate that's going to be really effective is going to be McCree and Moira's ultimates, as they're going to be the only ones that damage from far away. So make sure you take advantage of those, and then have the McCree and the Moira start to fill up their ultimates whenever you are trying to cross between the three save points. So that's going to be what the regular enemies are going to be for. But obviously, you are going to primarily have to rely on your main fire for this, so make sure you do keep that in mind. And of course, during the course of this whole time, you definitely don't want to get too greedy, so make sure you don't overextend. Make sure you try to keep the group together. Make sure you don't go for any unnecessary shots or ultimates whenever not necessary, and then just be very careful when making the journey between these safe points. So hopefully the two heavies can stay together the best they can, and then hopefully you can manage to take out one of them. Again, the bulk of your offense is going to come whenever you are waiting on the reset point. So just make sure you eliminate the first heavy, and then it should be way easier looping the other one. So once you are down to a single heavy, this is going to open up way more opportunities to land offense in. So make sure you establish his position, and make sure you adjust the loop accordingly. So just make sure you get him into the loop, and then we're going to pretty much do the same thing. We are going to just loop him and then take advantage of the three safe spots where we can just open fire on him. So back to our war of attrition. So just keep looping him. Again, make sure you be patient. One heavy can still do a ton of damage, so make sure you don't get too greedy. But you should have an easier time of getting open spots, as it's going to be way easier to bait him into dashing, which is going to be when he's going to be most vulnerable. So make sure you take advantage of that the best you can. And of course, if you ever need to get back to safety, make sure you hit up that reset point and adjust the loop accordingly. So if you need to reverse the loop, make sure you do so. Or if you need to cut across the courtyard, just make sure you are doing your best to mind the regular enemies, as they aren't going to do a ton of damage to you in the background. Trying to focus on the heavy while also trying to dodge them might be a little challenging. So be a little careful with that and try to thin them out whenever you can. And then also doing that is also going to help you build up your ultimates. But here we are getting back to the reset point, trying to bait the heavy through, and then once we finally finish him off, we should be good. All you have to do is just wait for the call to come in for the dropship to land, and then everyone's going to meet up at the top of the restaurant. Everyone's going to hold their position here. Thankfully, there aren't going to be any more specials that spawn immediately, at least not until the dropship gets here. So everyone's going to be super quick in getting into the dropship. So try your best to hold this position from any of the normal enemies. Dropship is going to drop in from behind you. Everyone's going to pile in on inside, and that's basically going to clear the mission and give you your victory. So once it's here, everyone jumps aboard, and then mission complete and the victory. Once you get past all of that stuff, you should be good for the achievement. There it is. This one's going to be for 15 gamer score, and that's all there is to it.